Okay, we are now recording. And before I start my lesson, my lecture today, I do want to open the floor to any questions you might have regarding assignments, packback, the final or the midterm exam next week, group projects, anything?
The part of the group assignment that's due this week, the second part of it that we're doing that's due by Saturday, for that we're just writing out the outline for the hypothesis stuff.
Is that Saturday? I think that was Sunday that was due, right?
It says 10/11.
Oh, man. Is that? Let me look. I apologize.
On the homepage, there's like a bunch of like weird things got like added to like the due date section.
Oh, the practice quizzes, right?
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah. That I'll explain those in just a minute. Let me look at.
10/11 is Sunday.
It is Sunday midnight.
The group work's due on the 11th. It's the like the assignment number 6. The lie detection one's due the 10th.
Yeah. Okay. Which is so 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th is Saturday, 11th is Sunday. So yeah. Okay. We're good. Are you good with that, Jillian?
Yeah, I just overlooked it by accident then.
That's okay. All right. Any other questions?
For the outline, does it have to be everyone in the group that has to do it, or is it one person? Like,
Nope. For the group assignments, for the group projects, all I need is one person to submit them. Everybody has to submit the peer evaluations, but I only need one person from the group to. So if you want to collaborate and figure out who's going to be the last person to touch it or tidy it up or whatever, you decide in the group who you want to submit it. Okay.
all right, thank you.
Yep.
Could you explain the literature review part?
The literature review section.
Yeah.
Are you referring to? Let me look in the. All right. So it's not uncommon for your thesis statement to change as you delve further into your literature review. So what I mean by that is for this project, for this week's project, you're going to come up with your thesis and you're going to start thinking about your introduction. Your introduction is going to cover why is this important. You should already know why you're doing this research, okay? Because it's important to you. And if it's important to you, chances are it's going to be important to somebody else. So why am I, the reader, going to be interested in what you're going to be presenting? So think about that with your introduction. The rest of that is going to be an outline. And so based on the resources, and I think I put in there, I'm looking for at least 8 resources. Yeah. 8 resources, because that's about the amount you're going to need for a paper of this magnitude. Go through those resources and start developing, putting together how this is going to look. Organize your paper, organize your thoughts. And all I need are bullet statements. I don't need you to actually write the entire paper. Just we're thinking about getting ideas from this author, and then next, we're going to look at this author, so on and so forth. So start organized. Many of you have probably done an outline before, right? So you have your main idea. You have, actually, I got to go opposite way here. You have your main idea. You have your main points 1, main points 2, because you're substantiating. You're trying to substantiate that information and prove your main point, right? It's evidence. You're looking at that as evidence. And then you're going to have your conclusion. You're not going to be able to get your conclusion until you actually write your paper, but you should have a good idea of how this paper is going to be organized. Your resources that you're going to be using, you can get them off of Kemp Library. If you look at week 1, I believe, my second video of that week, I did outline how to, I gave you an example, a walkthrough of how to get into the Kemp Library and go into those databases and research information. So this is where your literature review is going to come into play. At least 8. Maybe a lot of you are going to have more resources listed, but at least 8. You should have at least 8 for this. So based on those, how are you going to start introducing theories and concepts? What have other people looked at that you're going to be explaining later on in your paper? That's going to be your literature review. Because remember, we're not experts yet. When you become published and have done research on your own, then you can say, I'm the expert in this area and I can quote my own work. But until that happens, you have to use other people's work. Does that make sense?
Yes,
That's
thank you.
where, yep, that's where your literature review is going to come into play. All right.
Do we have to use sources from the database, or can we like just use other credible sources?
As long as they're credible. So no Wikipedia. I'd stay away from .coms unless you know that they're from experts of some sort. Yeah, just be very, very cautious. I always say use the databases is because they're going to be accepted. Many of you are going to be going into scientific fields and you're going to be writing a lot of APA papers. So it's probably better to get used to what's in these sources, what are in these databases. Okay.
Yep. But Psychology Today, would that be a credible.com then?
Yeah. Yeah. Be cautious of psychology.com tends to sensationalize things. I would say, yeah, you can use them as a source, but if it feels like it's some kind of propaganda that they're peddling an agenda of some sort, use that lightly. It does have scientific backings to that, but yeah, I'm trying to think. I've seen that used before. But yeah, just make sure it is credible. It's not some kind of sensationalized and media information. Okay.
Yep, no problem.
All right. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
How do you like grade our packbacks? Like, are you looking for something specifically? Like, how does that work? If you know what I mean.
So if you follow the directions and each week under content in D2L, the directions are pretty clear that I need one question and I need 2 responses by Sunday night. What I'm looking for specifically in the question it shouldn't be a yes or no question. So it should be, for example, how does information processing explain how we recall information? That would be a question. So that's my question. I keep doing that the wrong direction. That's my question. The description below would be according to Cicerelli and White, 2017, blah, 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 blah. Memory information processing, yada, yada, yada. So you should have at least a paragraph in there or 2. And then you're going to cite your source. If you do those 3 components, you're going to get 6 points for your post, for your question. Okay. And then the other 2 are going to be answering other posts. So you want to make sure your quality points, you probably see that you have quality points for what you're posting. They have to at least be above 30 for you to get the full points for that. Okay. Yep. Anything else? Oh, go ahead.
Can I ask about this? What day was it going to become available?
So the midterm exam is going to be available at midnight Sunday night, Monday morning, however you want to look at it, 12 a.m. Monday morning. And it's going to be available through midnight of Friday night. Okay, so you have an entire week to go ahead and go in there and take that test. It's 90 minutes, 50 questions, 2 points each for a grand total of 100 points. All right, no surprises on there. I will be opening up the practice quizzes on Friday, so you'll have an entire Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and all of next week if you want to take those practice exams. The practice exams are a little bit different than your quizzes. You can take those quizzes as many times as you want, and you can start taking them now. The limitation with the quizzes are that they're 10 randomly assigned from a pool of 20 or 30 questions. So it may take you several times to take those quizzes to see all those items in those quizzes. The practice quizzes are going to have all of the items in there. And so that way you can just keep taking them and you're going to see repetitiveness. You're going to see those same items over and over again. So that'll give you a little bit more stability if that's your style with understanding what those questions are. Now, I will not be giving you the answers to the items you missed. So please, please, please don't ask. It happens every semester. Somebody asks me, well, I don't understand. I got the incorrect question here, but it didn't give me an answer. You got to look that up. All right. Got to do a little bit of work. Does that answer your question, Kasimir?
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Is there gonna be a study
Professor.
or something?
All right. Hold on a second. I heard a couple people chime in at the same time.
I was just wondering if we have class on Monday.
We do not.
'Cause it's
Nope. We do. And I'm trying to think. Yeah. So we will be meeting, and I will not be doing lectures next week. So if you need to speak with me one-on-one, I will be available Tuesday. Wednesday, I'm still working with Jennifer. We're trying to figure out a way that we can maybe do some kind of review for the midterm exam. More to come on that. It's a little bit challenging to do that with Zoom, but we're trying to work something out. I'll let you know if we figured something out, and if you want to attend. Of course, none of this is really mandatory, but yeah, I'll be available on Tuesday to answer any questions. Wednesday and Friday, we're just not going to be doing any lectures. Okay. And somebody else had a question.
Yeah, it was me.
Go
I was
ahead.
wondering if there was going to be like a study guide or a list of terms we needed to know by any chance, or we just like have to know it?
All the items that are going to be on the midterm are going to be from those practice quizzes. So the better you know those practice quizzes, the better prepared you'll be for the midterm.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I have a question about assignment, the assignment for this week.
Mm-hmm.
What necessarily all has to be done? Because like I see like a whole like a book of stuff like on the assignment itself with the lie detection. Like, so what all like has to be done?
Okay. So you're going to read that article that I have in there. And based on what you read in there, you're just going to answer those questions below. So this should be, again, an essay format, APA style, title page if you want. I'm not going to require it, but it should at least have a page or two of just answering those three areas. Okay. So, and what else? Oh yeah. Make sure you have a reference page. So outside of that, what was there something specific regarding that topic that you had a question about?
I just wasn't sure what all had to be done, if we have to do further research, or is it just for just that article?
Yeah, it's just for that information that's in that assignment. Just read over that. If you want to substantiate whatever opinion you have with those three items, you can use, I have an APA document on polygraphs and another one on investigations. You can use those. I don't think your book really talks too much about it until we get into social psychology, but yeah, and just out of curiosity, you could share this if you want. How many of you, has anybody in this class had a polygraph before?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. What was that like? I mean, can you kind of describe the process of like how it's set up and
I mean, there's an instructor, and then there's a person that's like reading the machine,
Mhm.
and the instructor starts you out with like basic questions like your name, your age, your parents' names, and then depending on what they're asking about, they'll like ask you a specific question, and then they'll look at the person that's reading the machine that will can tell you whether or not you're lying, and kind of stuff like that. It's all like kind of plugged in to you and whatever, so it's like all reading.
Okay. Yeah. So it seems to be a universal process with lie detectors, with polygraphs. And I've taken multiple polygraphs in my life, not because I'm a troublemaker. I was in the military and held a security clearance. And part of that security clearance is they want to make sure that you're not somebody that's nefarious to the national security. So in order to do that, we were required to take these polygraphs. But every time that I took it, it varied a little bit maybe on the questions, but it always seemed to be a baseline, establishing a baseline of what you deem as a truth and what you deem as a non-truth. And they base that and that's based on your autonomic nervous your autonomic nervous system, your sympathetic nervous system, right? If you remember that, that's the system that's responsible for making us nervous, that bringing our anxiety, our fight or flight. And while somebody might be really skilled in not showing that they're really anxious about something, many of us are skilled in doing that. There are certain really subtle detections, like galvanic skin response, which is like a little electronic pulses that come out of our skin, which this system is designed to test. It can test our heart rate increasing even a little bit. It detects our breathing. It just various things throughout our body. So if we know that we're telling a non-truth, we're going to start getting a little bit nervous about that, and that's what lie detectors pick up on is the nervousness. Now, as you're reading this, look at it skeptically. Look at it through the lens of critical thinking, because with polygraphs, they're not admissible in certain instances in court. And the reason for that is because it doesn't work with everybody. Somebody might naturally be nervous. And if that happens, that's going to really skew the test. That's going to give false negatives. And it might show that they're lying when they're indeed not lying. Usually those are fleshed out in the baseline, but sometimes not. Another thing that it might not detect is somebody that is mentally ill. And when we get into schizophrenia, I think it's chapter 12 and 13, dealing with schizophrenia.
Sociopaths.
What's that?
Or sociopaths.
Sociopath, absolutely. If they're able to skew their perception of reality, then they believe that they're telling the truth, and that could be a problem with these tests. So keep those ideas in mind. And I like to use that with memories, because we talk a lot about how the information comes in, how we deal with it, and how we spit it back out through recall. And we'll get a good definition of that here in just a minute. All right. So anyway, keep that in mind as you're working through that assignment. Really cool stuff. I love forensics. I wish I could do more with that, with teaching it, but we're very limited on our time. All right. Any other questions before we begin? Okay, great. So let's start off this discussion. Let's start off this lecture with who cares to share their earliest memory, the first thing that they remember in their lives? Anybody?
I remember like moving my hand and thinking, how am I able to do this?
Okay, you mean as a baby?
Not as I think I was like 2 years old, and okay. It's a very, I feel like it's a weird first memory, but it sticks out to me. And I remember I was 2 years old because I was flexing two fingers because I was like, I'm two. Wait, how am I doing this?
Oh, okay, interesting. All right, a good memory. Anybody else?
I remember, I think I was two too. My mom was asleep and I was hungry, and we had like magnets on the refrigerator that was like a knife and a fork and a spoon. So I took the knife off and I put peanut butter and jelly on bread and I made myself a sandwich.
At 2 years old?
Yeah.
Impressive.
My mom every day.
Impressive. Okay. All right. Anybody else care to share theirs? All right. Jen, do you care to share yours? I know you talked to me about this. You said you're always dying to jump in here.
That is true. I think my first memory, I had to be like 3 years old, and my parents used to own a cabin in upstate New York, and it was like a 6-hour drive. And I remember we got there and it was the very first time I experienced pins and needles in my arm. So I don't remember like that much about it, but like I kind of like so the memory of like pins and needles for whatever I associate with like a fuzzy TV screen.
Okay.
So I like have like this weird like fuzzy memory of experiencing pins and needles when I got out of the car or something like that. So it's a weird memory. I asked my mom about it and she told me it never happened, but I know for a fact it did. So
Yeah.
I don't know. That's
Oh,
my weird first memory.
And we're going to talk about, and I'm not saying this applies to it the same way, but when we look at flashbulb memories, hopefully we'll get time on Friday to talk about that. But that's where something happens that might be so impactful and so traumatic that we can get a room full of 10 people and all of them observe the same events, and we could get 10 different stories out of it. That happens because we think in terms, we remember in terms of symbols and emotions. And if we feel strongly about something, some of us might be happy about something, some of us might be indifferent, and some of us might be terrified or scared. And depending on what your experience is going to really dictate on how you recall that information. And again, hopefully we'll have some time on Friday to delve into that. So what I'm hearing roughly is that everybody here has memories from about 2 to 3. Now, Stephanie and Marvia, I'm going to ask, were you early talkers? Did you talk really early compared to your siblings or whatever? Yeah, do you know?
I was an I was an only child. I was and I still currently am an only child. So I don't really have any siblings to compare it to, and I don't really know how when I started talking. I don't remember distinctly when I started talking.
Okay, Marvia?
Yeah, I was earlier than my brother. I did a lot of things early. Like
I bet you he doesn't like that.
no.
So the reason I mention that is because we really start developing our long-term memory when we start getting a firm grasp on our language abilities. Okay, we think in terms of language. Therefore, we remember in terms of language because now we're able to tell stories, right? We're able to interact with our environment a little bit more, which strengthens our long-term memories. At young ages, right after birth, like up to almost beginning at a month or two of after we're born, we're able to remember things. And we've shown that through demonstrations, through maybe, I think your book used the example of the crib, right? The child pulling on the ribbon to move the mobile in the crib. They learn. That's an indication that they learn at a young age. Therefore, their memory is intact. But it really doesn't start, we don't really start developing our long-term memory until we are later on, usually around 2, 3, usually around 3 or 4. 2, if you're starting to grasp the language, okay? So anyway, so really cool. I like to hear the stories out there. I have my story of my earliest memory was actually a dream. And I don't know if you've ever seen that, seen this item. It's a piggy bank that's shaped like a clown. And on one side, now I'm already terrified of clowns, right? But on one side of the clown, he has a smiley face. Cheeks are rosy, and you can clearly see the clown is smiling. You turn it around, and you have another face on it with a frowny face and crosses for the eyes. And for some reason, this darn piggy bank, when it was turned around, terrified me. And my parents told me this. But my very first dream was, my very first memory was a dream of this thing chasing me, and I was running away from it. Now, maybe my dad was messing around and making it chase me or something, but either way, it was an emotional impact for me, and it's something that I carried with me. Even today, I can still picture this darn piggy bank. But that's my first memory, and I know it was when I was 3 because it wound up, I think I broke it. I think I knocked it off the shelf or something. And it no longer existed, but my parents told me about that, and I do have those memories. So anyway, memories are really cool, and we start getting them at a young age. I'm going to share my screen with you because I want to come up with your definition. Start thinking about this. What is your definition of memory? Either something that you learned in the book. What do we consider a good definition for memories?
I have a quick question.
Sure, go ahead.
So back to like with not like just infants, but like younger children in general, how they like kind of learn faster. And I've noticed that like my family's from Italy, so like a lot of like the younger generation kids picked up learning how to speak Italian when they were very little, but a lot of us pretty much forgot it. And even like the kids, like when we go to Italy, like my 5-year-old cousin almost learned how to speak fluent Italian in less than a month. And he was 5. But like that's almost impossible for like someone who's 25, 30 years old to do. So I was
Okay.
just wondering like, what causes that.
You didn't forget. It's not that you well, actually, by definition, you did forget. But technically, what happened? You didn't lose those neural pathways. Those neural pathways are there. They're probably not strengthened because they haven't been used. But it's like anything else. It's like riding a bike. How many of you have not ridden a bike in 10 years? I recently started riding bikes again. But I haven't ridden in almost 20 years, but I still remembered how to do that because it's hardwired into our brain. It takes a little bit of time to jumpstart that. But what you're experiencing is what's called proactive forgetting. So and we're going to talk about this a little bit more on Friday, but you and your siblings, you learned the language and you knew the language, but it was then superseded by another set of rules and grammars and experiences. Okay, so those are what you use now. Now, if you went back to Italy and you started being immersed in that society, you would probably pick up on that language a lot quicker than somebody that is a non-native speaker. So just keep that in mind. And there are a lot of studies out there that would show that would be true. So if you went back to Italy, it may take a while, but
yeah, that's how it works. Yeah, because like I'll go for a month and then like by like week 3, it's almost like not like I almost like forgot English, but like I'll like mix words up or like I'll say something in Italian instead of English when I'm trying to say it in English.
Yeah, and we're going to talk more about that on. So put a pin in that because we're going to talk more about that on Friday. So anyway, what great example, by the way. Who was that was talking? CJ?
Me, I'm Raymond.
Oh, Raymond. Okay, all right. So yeah, I'll remind me on Friday of that story. I'll probably remember it anyway. All right. So what's a good definition of memories? What do you have?
Recalling previous events and or knowledge.
Okay. Recall. Well, I'm just going to put information. Okay. Recall information. All right. What else? Anybody? It doesn't have to be the book answer. It could be what you think memories are. Or how do we define memory? Oh.
Remembering a past event.
Okay, so kind of back to recall. All right. What about storing? Is it important to consider storing when we're thinking of memories, right? Because if we're recalling it, sorry, go ahead.
In order to recall something, you have to store it first.
Right. Yeah, we have to be getting that information from somewhere. We can't just make things up. I mean, some of us do, but for the most part, we don't make something out of nothing unless we have a vivid imagination, which again, hopefully we'll be able to get into on Friday. In order to store information, what do we have to do first?
We have to obtain it.
Right, we have to obtain it, and we're going to call that encoding. So I'm going to give you an example here, okay? Many of you have computers, and I'm going to use this example, I'm going to explain this example a little bit later. But your hard drive stores information in terms of bits, ones and zeros that are in sequence with each other, that are organized in a certain way that gives us images and gives us sounds and data, whatever it is that we're using our computer for, it's stored in that hard drive that way. Our brains operate in the same way. We have a certain kind of code that goes in through our sensory inputs. We work with it and we store it into our long-term memories. And again, I think I shared with you before, we look at that coding as symbols sometimes. Language, but we've equated language to symbols, things that are symbolic. So if I say the word apple right now, maybe some of you are able to picture the word apple, but maybe most of you, I would say a vast majority of you are probably picturing a picture of an apple, what an apple looks like, or what it smells, or what it tastes like. whatever your experience is, you're going to think in terms of those symbols. And we also think in terms of emotions. I said that already. So whatever it is that we experience, and the higher the more intensely that we experience something with our emotions, the stronger our memories are, right? Because now we're going to start picking up smells and sights and sounds, everything that's around that. The more intense our emotions are towards that, right? So quite, just putting this simply, excuse me. So when we look at recall, we're looking at pulling information from our long-term memory, right? Or even our short-term memory, LTM, and in some cases, short-term memory. Storing information is holding, holding encoded info. I can't spell today. Get too ahead of myself. Encoded info. And of course, encoding is input according to brain code. Now, what's the problem with that? And again, with Jen's example of somebody, her mom had a different memory of that event than she did. What's the problem with emotions? Do we all feel the exact same emotion for an exact same event or situation? We don't, right? We don't experience that because we all may have different memories or different experiences going into that event. So therefore, we're all going to get something a little bit different from that. So with that in mind, is our memory really reliable? Probably not. We can't think of our long-term memory as a tape reel or a hard drive, right? Because whatever we put into those media, we get the exact same thing out. Our minds aren't like that because we all put something a little bit different. We all put our own little spin on things as it goes into our encoding into our short-term memory. And then when we recall it exactly how we experienced it, right? With those different emotions. So that really makes our memories very unreliable when we're comparing it to other people's account of what's happening. And we'll talk more about that on Friday. So our working definition of memory is an active system that senses, organizes, alters, stores, and recalls. So a lot of these we already defined. These are the three systems that we need to have happen in order to observably have happen in order to say a memory was formed, okay? So I'm gonna pose, before I get into this next part of this, I'm gonna ask how many of you can tell me, because we're in psychology class, and in psychology class we should know what dialectical behavioral therapy is. How many of you can tell me what dialectical behavioral therapy, or DBT, is? Can any of you? Does anybody remember? Did I cover it? Anybody? It's okay to say no. You're not going to look like a fool because I didn't cover it. I did not cover it.
I don't remember learning about that.
Okay, thank you, Kenny. Thank you for being brave. Thank you for being bold. You don't remember it because you didn't encode it. You didn't encode it because I didn't give it to you, okay? So I have to be able to give you information in order for you to store it and even recall. Now, just because I give you information doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to store it and be able to recall it, because we have a thing called selective attention. So I'm going to explain the model that we use for getting using our memory. We call it the information processing model. Now, your book covered two other theories, and unfortunately, I don't have time to go through them today. But they talked about parallel distribution processing and levels of processing as two other theories of how the mind works. Again, none of these are 100% accurate. We don't know how memories are formed because we can't. It's not like a computer where we can plug an electrode into our brain and see where those electrons are flowing and how they're organized so we can reproduce them somewhere else. We're not able to do that, okay? Not at this current juncture in science. So we have ideas of how these work. And the PDP, or the parallel distribution processing, and level of processing are two other popular models, which I think I provided videos for in week 6 resources. But the one that we're going to be most familiar with, at least in moving forward, is the information processing model. So I think I asked this question before. I think a couple of you had expressed that you know things about computers, okay? So let's say you have your computer and you need to do something, okay? Geez, excuse me. Let's say that you need to, that you wake up tomorrow morning because you're great students and you decide that you want to start studying for your psychology midterm exam next week. What do? You have your computer in front of you. How are you going to study for your exam with using your computer?
Taking the quizzes.
Okay, but let's kind of pull back a little bit further. So let's say right here's my computer. I'm looking at it and I want to study for my quiz. What do I do first?
Read the chapter.
Okay, man, I think I might.
Well, you have to start it first.
Okay, you got to start the computer, right? Because we can't just think about it. Yeah, I know. We can't just think about, hey, I'm gonna take my practice quizzes, and boom, the practice quizzes come up. We see it, we've learned it, and we're able to. It doesn't work that way. So we turn on the computer. What's our next step?
Go to D2L.
Okay, how do you
open the internet browser?
How do you do that? How do you open your internet browser?
By clicking on it.
Clicking a mouse. So we have, in the beginning, we have input. So here's the information. We have the information that we want to interact with, okay? Information, I should have just put info. So we have the information that we want to interact with. And right now our goal is to study for our midterm exam, all right? So we click a mouse. So a mouse is a way that we can input information into our computer. What are other ways that we input information?
What? Typing, downloading.
Keyboard, right? Okay. What else? Camera. Microphone. Right? So these are all ways that we can get information from us to the computer so that the computer can kind of do its thing. So based on what our goal is, so for example, we'll even say scanner, because some of you have scanners that you may need to upload documents, right? So let's say we have these items to put in. So we're on a Zoom session. We're just monitoring a Zoom session, like many of you are probably doing now. You don't need certain things, like just even listening to me. You don't need your mouse. You don't need your keyboard. You probably did initially to get in, but you don't need them now. You do need your camera. Many of you probably not. And for a vast majority of you, you probably aren't using your microphone, but they're available in case you need them. But we don't need our scanner. So our task is to attend a Zoom session. We are going to use these inputs, which is what we would relate to as our selective attention. Okay, so similarly, we have sensory inputs. So we have sight, sound, taste, smell, and touch. All of our senses are coming in. Now, do we pay attention to all these senses at once? Like, for example, I use this example with my live classes. As soon as they come in and we start talking about the information processing model, I ask them, how many of you have counted, without looking, can tell me how many lights are on the ceiling. And rarely, I think I had one student once told me exactly how many lights there were, because I think one of his buddies tipped him off, so he fooled me. But or maybe he did. He realized walking in, he just happened to count the lights. So why don't we do that? Why don't we count every little detail when we walk in the room?
Because we choose what we find interesting.
Right. We choose what we want to use. Selective attention. Okay. Selective attention. And many of us, including myself, have very selective attention, especially when it comes to doing chores, at least for me. So I hear what I want to hear sometimes. But anyway, we have the information available to us, but we are very limited on what we can process in a short amount of time. So we start picking and choosing based on what our goal is. So our goal is to go into class and sit and listen to lectures. So that's what we're going to do. We're not going to focus on the lights. We're not going to focus on how many bricks are in the wall or count how many seats are there, because those aren't important to us. So based on the information, it really narrows down what goes into our short-term memory, short-term memory, or our working memory. Now, with our computers, we have a similar, what would be equivalent to our short-term memory in our computers? Does anybody know computers enough to tell me that?
Our history?
Okay, browser history. Where is that usually stored? What kind of memory is that stored in?
RAM?
RAM, random access memory, right? So for those of you that don't know computers, our random access memory is what we're working with. So everything that's on your screen right now, you are currently actively working with. You might be typing a paper, you might be browsing the internet, you might be watching a video, you're watching me right now. So all of that is in your short-term random access memory. And usually, I think nowadays, it's like 8 gig is pretty standard. If you have a high-end machine, you paid more money, you might have 16 or 32 gig, right? It's very limited. We can't have unlimited random access memory. We can have more than what we use, but very similarly to our short-term memory, it is very limited. So really, without something being unrehearsed, we only have maybe around 5 to 10 seconds worth of information that we're able to work with before we say we don't need it, and it kind of fizzles away. We don't rehearse it. So again, up here, we're working with the document. Down here, we're rehearsing. Now, the cool thing I like to point out here is rehearsing. We're rehearing. We're recycling that information. Maybe it's because we're studying. If you're going to be using these practice quizzes, you're going to be taking them over and over and over again because you're rehearsing and you're strengthening what information is going into your long-term memory, okay? So the more you rehearse it, the stronger that long-term memory is going to be, because you're strengthening those neurons within your brain. Similarly, to a computer, what would be comparative to your long-term memory in your computer?
Hard drive.
Your hard drive, exactly, or USB drive, or whatever kind of long-term storage you have. Hard drive, absolutely. And based on what you're doing here, we also have our goal, right? We're looking up practice quizzes, for example. So we got it, we made our goal, great. Whatever we did do, we moved into our hard drive. We can put that hard drive away, we can turn off our computer, we can put that USB drive in our drawer for a day or a month or a year and never have to use it again. But when we do need it, we can certainly access it and we put it right back into our RAM, depending on what our goal is. Same way with rehearsal and short-term memory. So your goal is to maybe be able to answer 80% on your first pass of those practice quizzes. If you get that 80%, great. You've met your goal. And depending on how much you rehearse, the rest of it goes into, that experience goes into your long-term memory. Now, say you go, it becomes time for you to take that midterm test. You're going to retrieve or recall that information from your long-term memory and put it back into your working memory, okay? So that you can meet, again, your other goal, all right? Now, on Friday, we're gonna talk about where some of these, where we can inject certain errors within these processes here, okay? And that could be through some kind of influence of some sort. You're gonna read about it a little bit with that, with the lie detection assignment that we have this week. But in a nutshell, that's how information processing model works. Did I lose anybody? Did this make sense to everybody?
Yes.
Yeah, it made sense.
Okay, good. All right, so I'm actually going to stop here right now. And if you don't have any questions, that's all I have for today. I will see everybody here on Friday, so have a good rest of your day and take care.
Have a
Hey,
good day.
Professor.
Yep.
Professor.
Yeah, hold on one second here. I'm going to stick around. Just let everybody else jump off here that does not need to speak with me. I'm going to stop.
I don't, well, real quick, I don't need to say anything.